Hello, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's getting late, so we'll try and keep it short. Okay, so this is a task that sort of came out of a little bit of discussion with Martha when she was in Barcelona a couple of months ago, and a project that we've been working on, Audio Commons, which is a project for promoting the use of Creative Commons content in the creative industries. And so I'll give a bit of an introduction to sort of what we're looking at trying to do, and our plans for a new task, hopefully next year. So generally, we're talking about emotion and mood. We've seen in this this current session this sort of idea of emotion in videos and movies. We're taking a look at this in the context of music. So this is something that's been done quite often before. It's a relatively common task in the music information retrieval field. And it's very relevant for sort of search and recommendation types of tasks. So as just a general background, I'll give a description of a few existing tasks that have done this kind of thing before, and then move on to what we're proposing. So one big contest in the music information retrieval field is a contest called MIREX, the Music Information Retrieval Evaluation Exchange. It's a yearly series of a number of contests around classification. And so there is a music emotion classification task in MIREX that's been run for a number of years now. It has some restrictions. One big restriction is it's based on excerpts of commercial music, which means that the data cannot be shared publicly. It's shared privately to researchers who want to participate in the challenge. The way that the classification works is, instead of trying to classify a particular feeling or a particular arousal valence value, they have a number of clusters, and so these clusters are common moods, common themes that are grouped together. And so the classification task is actually to try and classify music into one of these 5 clusters. Something a bit closer to home, MediaEval 2015, we had a music, emotion and music task presented here. It was done over 1,000 songs, annotated by 10 people each, using free audio, so audio from the Free Music Archive, being Creative Commons licensed, I believe, so that was able to be distributed. The interesting thing about this is that as part of the gathering of the data, the task organizers asked people to annotate these songs to get particular values, arousal and valence values, continuous values, for the classification task. Just something else also to bring your attention to, Acoustic Brains, which is the project we talked about earlier on this afternoon. We have our own mood data set built by a student who was in the music technology group a number of years ago now, and so we have a number of mood tags, and so we can classify into one of these tags: happy or sad or aggressive, relaxed, for example. So how can we improve on this? What we're looking at doing is suggesting that we work with Jamendo. So for those who don't know Jamendo, it's a large website database of music, all Creative Commons licensed. So it's a website that allows people who make music and people who want to give their music away, it allows them to upload it to Jamendo and say, hey, this is me, here is the music that I make, you're free to download it. It includes a lot of metadata provided both by the musician, so the person who uploads the music, and also by an editorial team at Jamendo, the company, who go through this music and also add attributes. This metadata includes things like instrumentation, whether it's got a vocalist or not, the genre, but it also includes information on moods and themes, and so we're interested in this data specifically. Related to Jamendo, there is a service called Jamendo Licensing, and this is a platform that allows people who upload music to say, oh, I'm also interested in trying to make money from my music. And this is a service that Jamendo sells to shops, for example. So there are a number of chains in Europe who license audio content from Jamendo to play in their stores, because that's royalty-free music that they don't have to pay licensing on. And so we're looking at working with this subset of Jamendo, the subset of the content on Jamendo, which is used in this commercial product. So there's about 100,000 music recordings in that collection. So just as an example of what Jamendo looks like, here you can type in some search queries and get some results. Here in the corner, there is a list of what Jamendo is calling themes. And so this includes things that we typically think of about mood, let's say happy or sad or aggressive, but it also includes things like there's a theme advertising or a theme romantic or Christmas. And so their annotations are sort of joined together in this category. And so we're looking at whether we want to separate these categories out and only concentrate on ones that are more related to mood, or include all of these categories together. So we're going to give just an overview of the type of data that we have and some ideas that we've thought about how to present the tasks and how to do the evaluation. We'll be really happy to get some feedback from you as well. So there are about 50,000 tracks that have annotations of mood and theme, and so you can see that we've got some happy stuff, maybe 3,000 tracks, so quite good. But we're going down, we see things like love, melodic, which are not necessarily mood, and so this is something that we have to decide whether we're interested in or whether we want to get rid of it. So looking at approaches of ways that we can present these as subtasks or as tasks within the challenge, we got some ideas. So we can do classification. So we can say, well, we classify this as happy or sad or aggressive. We can do cluster classification. So like the example that I showed in Merrick's. So we have clusters of labels that are the same. So we can say, we think this is cluster 1 or we think this is cluster 2. Not necessarily happy, but in that general happy cluster. We could do arousal and valence regression like the emotion and music task in 2015 did. Or we could consider taking that arousal valence kind of idea, but saying, well, we've got these 4 quadrants in the arousal valence space. Perhaps we just want to classify into somewhere into one of these quadrants. And this type of work's been done in Izmir, the Music Information Retrieval Conference, just earlier this month. So looking at these last ones, sort of how do we get this arousal valence information? We've looked at a couple of solutions. What we've noticed, so we've got about 260, 270 tags. 200 of these are in this list, English words with arousal and valence ratings. So we actually have this existing data set that allows us to take the annotations that we have, the text annotations that we have, and map these to arousal and valence values. So we don't have to ask people to listen to tracks in order to get these annotation values. Just as a general overview of the type of data that we have, we see that we have a lot of annotations with high valence, and not very many with low. We think this sort of makes sense because this is music that Jamendo is selling to put in shops, right? You don't necessarily want sad and depressing music while you're trying to buy clothes. And so there is a big bias in this data, and so this is something that we have to look at, whether if we want to normalize against the size of all of these classes, we're going to have to work out how we get rid of, how we remove some of the tracks in this data set. We also noticed, because it's a multi-class tagging problem, or the annotations we can have multiple annotations per recording, we see that based on these 4 quadrants in the arousal valence space, we see that there are a number of recordings that have annotations in multiple spaces. So if we're looking at some sort of regression task here, we have to decide whether we want to accept only one value or all values or any of the values. So we have some questions, and this is what we hope that we can get some feedback here or later on tomorrow. Which of these do we think is a good idea for a classification task, for a subtask in this task? Do we want to do classification? Do we want to do regression? Do we want to do clustering? We know that there is history in MediaEval of doing this sort of continuous annotation. Is that something we want to continue with, or do we want to move into something else? We know that the data that we have in Jamendo is a little bit skewed towards the nice, happy, upbeat music. Is that a problem? Can we reduce the size of the task? Maybe we only want to focus on 2 of these quadrants, on some particular types of labels. And then in terms of evaluation, how do we say whether something is good, whether something is bad, whether a result is worth treating as correct or not? That's it. I'm very happy to discuss further any comments. Thanks.